Hello, this is Richard DeFord from Doc Pens, and I just wanted to spend a minute addressing something that I see happen in Facebook posts all the time regarding pens. And it's usually a complaint about slow starts on their pen or um, the ink not flowing, those types of nib issues. I wanted to kind of demystify the nib and explain how it works because it's very scientific. And if one thing is out of place, then it's not going to perform correctly. And most of the things you can fix yourself without replacing the pen, without replacing the nib. Certainly there are times when replacing the nib is needed, especially if you've dropped it and it's become misshapen or splayed. But I have this. This is a size 5 nib here that I'm going to show you. Most of my pens have size 6, but I'm going to use this size 5 because it's not inked, and I don't want to mess with getting any ink on me. But so you have the nib, and I don't know if you can tell, but probably can't. I'm trying to hold it where you can see it. There's actually two pieces that are together up here at that point, and there's a line in between that. You see that? That has to have a separation. Now, it may not be a separation you can see. It may be a very tiny separation, but it has to be separated. If one tine is over the other, your nib is not going to write correctly. They have to be perfectly side by side, and there has to be separation. And so there's actually a gauge that you can buy very cheaply on Amazon, or you can use like tinfoil or something very small that you can slide into those two tines and separate them just enough to where that ink will flow through there. So that's a common issue where the nib has gotten pinched together for whatever reason. Maybe somebody dropped it, or maybe it came from the factory that way. I don't know. But you do have to have separation. I don't know if I can get it any way to where you can actually see. You can see the line there, and there does just have to be a tiny bit of separation. So obviously my camera is not going to let me do it. But the other thing, I wonder if I can touch. Yeah, it might let me do it there. There we go. See that separation? You can kind of see light through there. That's what is needed. Just a very small amount. Doesn't have to be large at all. Okay, so the next part of it is the feed. So I'm going to turn this around here. And the feed has to be perfectly centered between the two tines. If it's one side or the other, it's not going to work right. It has to be perfectly centered. And the tip of the feed needs to be down towards the nib, but not or the end of the nib, not all the way down. If it's all the way down, it's not going to work either. But it needs to be an appropriate space from the tip down to the end of the feed. So that's another piece. You have the separation between the two tines, and you have the location of the feed. So if it is not correct, it's not going to work. So I just pulled this nib out. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to use this one, because this particular one I knew I could pull out without hurting myself. This is what your nib and your feed look like. Gosh, uncoordinated. Plus the camera's backwards, so that doesn't make it easy. All right, so it sits like that. And when you look at the back of the feed, the nib is a piece of metal that just rests on that feed. Okay, so you can see from the side what it looks like. And if I turn it around again, the feed has to be perfectly in the middle of the two tines. If it is rotated like that, it's not going to work right. So you want to make sure that it is perfect, just right in the middle. Now, since the feed typically is rounded, when I take this off, I'm just going to pull it off. Notice it's rounded where the nib sits. So the nib will actually rotate like this around that feed. Now, the nib housing may be shaped in a way to prevent that rotation. I don't know if you can see this or not. It's going to be hard with the darkness. Trying to get the light just a little bit. See, there's a little flat area there on the bottom. That's designed for the bottom of the feed. And then the nib sits on the top. And this one has some little notches in there that will prevent it from going all the way around the feed. But it'll still rotate just a little bit. So you want to make sure that your nib is sitting perfectly on this feed. And if it's like this, it's not going to work. And if it's like this, it's not going to work. The nib is not pushed in enough. So it needs to be perfectly in the middle. Now, most of your nibs and feeds, most of them are going to be friction based, meaning that they slide in to place. So that is the way this one is, just slides right in. Some are easier than others. And you can damage the feed if you're not careful. So you want to use your thumb right on this spot right here and grab firmly like this to pull it out. But be careful, because you don't want to change the separation and the placement of the tines. But depending on the nib, some of them are really easy to work with, like this one that I have. Okay, so I have put that back into place. And again, I'm going to show you how it should look. It should look just like that, perfectly centered and down towards there should be a good separation here between the tip and the feed, just like that. This nib will write beautifully because it's configured properly. But if I turn this slightly, I'll show you how it would be misaligned. This is all it takes. See that? It is just a little out. If it's out a little out, it's not going to write correctly. So, as you're talking about your pen slow starting or not flowing correctly, make sure that your nib is properly aligned, just like that. If it's not going to work properly. The third part that you need to be aware of is this is the section that the nib slides into, and there is always a nipple of some kind, unless you have a vacuum-filled pen. There's a nipple of some kind, and your converter or your cartridge that you use with ink goes onto that. Well, if you have the wrong cartridge or converter, the hole to this may be too big and it fits on that nipple loosely, and then you start wondering why your pen is leaking. Well, that may be because you have the wrong converter or cartridge to match the end of your feed inside your section. So check this area too. This should fit firmly. It's not so snug that you can't move it in and out when you need to refill it, but it should fit securely. If it's not, it's probably not the right cartridge for your nib and feed unit. Or that nipple may have gotten broken. I've had them come to me where that nipple is it's been moved in and out so often through the years that it's gotten brittle and it is broken. So there's not a good seal that is created here. So just be mindful of that again, and you want to make sure that that feed and that nib look just like that on the end. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Thanks. Have a great day.